Mom said, "Stay away." But one fateful decision to help a stranger shattered a world of prejudice. A single mother's political career and entire worldview are threatened when a powerful enemy exposes her secret. Will the very people she judged become her only salvation? If you're new here, subscribe and comment your location. Now let's begin. Mom said, "Stay away from bikers," 12-year-old Leo whispered, his voice trembling as much as his hands, which were clenched around the handlebars of his own battered bicycle. He and his 15-year-old sister Chloe stood frozen at the edge of a rain-slicked country road, staring at the tangled metal and motionless figure in the ditch. The man was massive, or at least he seemed that way, lying amidst the wreckage of a Harley-Davidson. A leather vest, adorned with patches and the faded insignia Knights of the Asphalt, was torn at the shoulder. Dark blood mixed with the mud, a stark, terrifying contrast to the pale skin of his face. Chloe, ever the pragmatist, swallowed her fear. "Mom also says to help people in need, Leo. Call 911 now." Her command cut through the panic. While Leo fumbled with his phone, his words a jumble of accident and Old Mill Road, Chloe slid down the muddy embankment, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air smelled of gasoline, wet earth, and copper. The biker groaned, a low, pained sound that was more animal than human. His eyes fluttered open, hazy with pain. "The bike," he rasped. "Don't move," Chloe ordered, her voice surprisingly steady. She knelt, shrugging off her light jacket and pressing it against the gash on his forehead. "My brother's calling for help." He tried to focus on her. "Kids, get out of the road. The car that hit you is long gone," Chloe said, her fingers already stained red. She saw the details now. The salt and pepper scruff on his jaw, the surprising kindness in his pain-glazed blue eyes, the patch on his vest that read Cruz. This wasn't a monster. This was a man. Lydia was reviewing her notes for the upcoming town council vote on Ordinance 42, the one that would effectively zone the biker bar, the Rusty Bolt, out of existence, when her phone buzzed with a call from the county hospital. The world tilted. Her children, her babies. The 30-minute drive was a blur of worst-case scenarios, her political poise shattered into a million pieces of raw maternal terror. She burst into the emergency room, her designer blouse clinging to her with a cold sweat. "My children, Leo and Chloe Miller." A nurse pointed to a curtained-off bay. Lydia yanked it back, expecting to see broken bones and bruises. Instead, she found Chloe calmly sipping apple juice and Leo excitedly talking to the very large, very leather-clad man lying in the bed, his head bandaged and his arm in a sling. "Mom," Leo chirped, "this is Cruz. He's a Knight of the Asphalt. He got run off the road by a jerk in a BMW." Lydia's blood ran cold. Her eyes darted from her children's safe, animated faces to the biker, Cruz. He was everything she campaigned against. The worn leather, the intimidating size, the very aura of a world she deemed dangerous and disruptive. And her children had brought him here. "Mrs. Miller," Cruz's voice was a low rumble, softened by pain and something that sounded like genuine gratitude. "Your kids. They're something else. Brave. You should be proud." Lydia couldn't find her voice. Pride was not the emotion churning in her gut. It was a toxic cocktail of relief, fury, and a deep, unsettling cognitive dissonance. This man, this element, was thanking her, praising her children. The script was all wrong. She managed a tight, "Are you both okay?" to Chloe and Leo, her gaze never leaving Cruz. "We're fine, Mom," Chloe said, her eyes challenging. Cruz needed help. The ride home was silent, thick with unspoken words. That night, as Lydia tucked Leo in, he asked, "Mom, why did you say bikers were bad?" "Cruz has a daughter my age. He fixes motorcycles for a living." Lydia kissed his forehead, her carefully constructed worldview showing its first hairline fracture. The world isn't that simple, sweetie. Now go to sleep. The next morning, the fracture became a chasm. It started as a low, distant rumble, a sound that grew steadily into a thunderous, earth-shaking roar. Lydia, sipping her coffee at the kitchen window, froze. One by one, they turned onto her quiet, manicured cul-de-sac. Motorcycles, dozens of them. A river of gleaming chrome and black leather. Their engines a synchronized, deafening heartbeat. Her hand flew to her mouth. This was it. Retribution. They'd found out where she lived, the councilwoman who wanted them gone. She fumbled for her phone, her finger hovering over 911, but then the engines cut off. The sudden silence was almost more deafening than the roar. The lead rider, a tall man with a graying beard and a vest that read Prez, dismounted. He wasn't scowling. He looked nervous. He removed his helmet, and behind him, 24 others did the same. They weren't a mob of demons. They were men and women of all ages. A woman with kind eyes and a property of nobody patch. A burly man with a military haircut and a USMC tattoo visible on his forearm. The Prez, whose name was David, approached her front door holding a large, professionally made banner. Lydia stood paralyzed behind the door, peering through the peephole. David knocked, a firm, respectful tap. Taking a shuddering breath, Lydia opened the door, her body braced for a confrontation. "Ms. Miller?" David's voice was gravelly but calm. "I'm David. We're the Knights of the Asphalt. We heard what your children did for our brother, Cruz." He unrolled the banner. In bold, elegant letters it read, "Thank you. Miller family, courage knows no bounds." He continued, "Cruz is family. You saved our family. We don't forget that." He gestured to the group behind him. "That's Mark. He owns the auto body shop on Elm. James, union electrician, wired the new community center. Paul, retired Army, runs the VFW. Elena, she's the chef at the Italian kitchen. We're not here to cause trouble. We're here to say thank you." Lydia was speechless. Her eyes scanned the faces. These were the disruptive elements, the criminal influence she'd railed against in town halls. They were her constituents. They were the town. From the sidewalk, Leo waved excitedly at a biker who waved back. Chloe stood beside her brother, a small, knowing smile on her face. The moment was captured. A local blogger passing by snapped a photo. Councilwoman Lydia Miller, standing on her pristine porch face to face with 24 bikers. The image was perfect. The caption, however, would be a dagger. It hit the Havenwood Herald online that afternoon. The photo was splashed across the top, but the headline screamed, "Councilwoman Miller's hypocrisy exposed, anti-biker crusader hosts club at her home." The article was penned by a concerned citizen, but the venomous prose and strategic leaks pointed directly to Tom Riggins, the powerful developer who stood to make millions if the zoning around the Rusty Bolt changed. He'd been a silent supporter of Lydia's Clean Up the Town platform. Now he saw his opening. Her phone exploded. Texts from fellow council members demanding explanations, emails from furious supporters calling her a traitor. A particularly nasty voicemail from Tom Riggins himself. "Lydia, Lydia, Lydia, consorting with the very filth you promised to sweep away. The voters will eat you alive. Drop the ordinance, endorse my waterfront project, and I might just throw you a life preserver." Her political allies, the respectable people in suits, vanished. Her calls went straight to voicemail. She was radioactive. Sitting alone in her darkening living room, Lydia felt the walls of her career closing in. She had built her life on a foundation of order and image, and it was crumbling into dust. The doorbell rang. She considered ignoring it, but a stubborn flicker of defiance made her answer. It was Cruz. He was leaning on a cane, his face still bruised, but his eyes clear and sharp. He'd seen the article. "Heard you're taking fire," he said, his voice low. "It's what I get for..." she trailed off, shame heating her cheeks. For helping a man who was bleeding in a ditch? Cruz finished for her, a hint of a challenge in his tone. He stepped inside, his presence immediately making her tidy foyer feel smaller, more charged. The scent of leather and faint motor oil clung to him, an aroma she'd always associated with trouble but now found strangely, unsettlingly appealing. "They're destroying everything I've worked for," she whispered, the confession torn from her. "They're using you," Cruz countered, his gaze intense. "Riggins wants that land. He doesn't care about this town. He cares about his pockets. We do care." He took a limping step closer. The air crackled between them, a palpable energy that was part confrontation, part something else entirely. A magnetic pull that made her breath catch. "My club. We have a proposition." The next evening, the rumble returned to her street, but this time it was a coordinated, purposeful sound. David, Cruz, and the rest of the knights dismounted, but they weren't carrying a banner. They were armed with clipboards, flyers, and a determined glint in their eyes. David laid out the plan. "We're not politicians, Lydia, but we know people. We know this town street by street, diner by diner. We're going to tell them the truth, our truth, and yours." And so began the most unconventional political campaign Havenwood had ever seen. A fleet of motorcycles flying small American flags and "Re-elect Lydia Miller" signs became a rolling billboard of defiance. Elena, the chef, organized a fundraiser at her restaurant, the place packed with bikers and their families, all donating to Lydia's campaign. James, the electrician, debated Tom Riggins's foreman at the hardware store, dismantling his arguments with blue-collar logic. Paul, the veteran, stood on street corners, his military bearing lending an unassailable credibility to his words. "Lydia Miller's kids have more honor and courage than that snake Riggins will ever have." He'd boom, and people listened. Lydia, initially hesitant, found herself riding on the back of Cruz's newly repaired Harley, her arms wrapped around his waist, the wind whipping away her fears. It was terrifying and exhilarating. She saw her town from a new perspective, not from a council dais or a campaign brochure, but from the back of a motorcycle waved at by waitresses, mechanics, and firefighters, the very heart of Havenwood. One night, after a long day of door-knocking, Cruz drove her to a cliff overlooking the town. The lights twinkled below, a map of the community she was fighting for. "It's different up here, isn't it?" Cruz said, his voice quiet. "All the noise, it just fades away." "It is," Lydia admitted, her body still humming from the vibration of the bike, from his proximity. She looked at him, really looked at him. The strength in his hands, the quiet integrity in his face, the loyalty that ran as deep as the engine's rumble. He turned to her, the space between them electric. "Lydia," he murmured, his hand coming up to gently cup her cheek. His thumb stroked her skin, a rough, calloused touch that sent a shiver of pure, undiluted desire straight through her. It was a charged, 18-plus moment of raw connection, a chemistry so potent it stole the air from her lungs. His eyes dropped to her lips, and for a heart-stopping second she thought he would kiss her. She wanted him to. The polished councilwoman and the rugged biker suspended in a moment that defied every rule she'd ever lived by. But he pulled back, his respect for her and the complicated situation a tangible force. The tension didn't break, it simmered, a promise of something more. "We should get you back," he said, his voice husky. The town hall meeting for the final vote on Ordinance 42 was packed. The air was thick with tension. Tom Riggins, smug in a three-piece suit, held court on one side, surrounded by his developers and the respectable elite who now looked at Lydia with open contempt. Lydia stood alone at the podium, her notes trembling in her hands. Then, the doors at the back of the hall swung open. Cruz walked in slowly, purposefully, without his cane. Behind him came David, Mark, James, Paul, Elena, and the rest of the knights. They didn't say a word. They simply filed into the rows, a silent, powerful wall of black leather and unwavering support. They were joined by the waitress from the diner, the owner of the flower shop, the teachers whose cars James fixed for free, the veterans Paul had helped. The room's balance of power shifted palpably. Riggins sneered, "Quite the entourage, councilwoman. I see you fully embraced your new associates." Lydia looked from Riggins's cold, calculating face to the weathered, honest faces of the people who had stood by her when no one else would. She thought of Leo's question, of Chloe's steady courage, of Cruz's hand on her cheek. She set her notes down. "For years," she began, her voice clear and strong, carrying through the silent room, "I believed that community was about a certain image, a certain kind of order. I was wrong." She looked directly at Cruz, her eyes glistening. "Community isn't about the clothes you wear or the vehicle you ride. It's about the content of your character. It's about showing up when someone is in trouble. It's about loyalty. A few weeks ago, my children taught me that lesson by saving a stranger's life. And that stranger and his friends have spent every day since teaching me what that word, community, truly means." She took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping over the stunned council members. "I was wrong about the Knights of the Asphalt. I judged them based on fear and prejudice, and in doing so, I failed to see the pillars of strength they are in this town. Therefore, I am not only withdrawing my support for Ordinance 42, I am proposing we grant the Rusty Bolt a historical business designation." The room erupted, cheers from one side, furious shouts from the other. Riggins shot to his feet. "This is an outrage. You're siding with these thugs over the future of this town." It was David who stood up. He turned to face the crowd, his voice a calm, powerful wave that cut through the chaos. "Thugs?" He smiled, a sad, knowing smile. "Ms. Miller's son, Leo, is afraid of dogs because one bit him when he was 5. Her daughter, Chloe, wants to be a doctor. She spends her Saturdays volunteering at the animal shelter. Tom Riggins, what's the name of the waitress who served you coffee every morning for 10 years? What's the name of the man who plows your driveway in the winter?" Riggins spluttered, his face turning purple. He had no answer. The vote was a foregone conclusion. Ordinance 42 was defeated in a landslide. Later, outside the town hall under the starry sky, the knights lined up their bikes. The crisis was over, but the real work was just beginning. Cruz walked up to Lydia. "You were magnificent in there," he said, his voice full of a warmth that spread through her whole body. "I had a good teacher," she replied, her smile soft and genuine. "A few of them, actually." He reached out, his fingers lacing with hers. The touch was simple, but it felt like a vow. "The road's clearer now," he said, his eyes holding a future's worth of promise. "But the ride's just getting started." As the engines roared to life around them, a symphony of freedom and newfound family, Lydia knew she was finally home. It wasn't a place on a map. It was the space between her hand and his, the rumble beneath her feet, and the unshakable knowledge that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let the world you thought you knew fall apart, so a better, truer one can roar in to take its place. The roar of the engines faded into the distance, leaving behind a silence that felt both profound and pregnant with possibility. Lydia stood on the sidewalk, the cool night air a balm on her flushed skin. Cruz's hand was still in hers, a warm, calloused anchor in the whirlwind of the evening. "I should," she started, then faltered, her political eloquence deserting her. "The kids. They're with a sitter." Cruz nodded, his thumb making a slow, deliberate sweep across her knuckles. "I know. David's wife, Maria, is with them. She's a former elementary school teacher. They're in good hands." The fact that he'd thought of that his club had seamlessly integrated the care of her children into their campaign of support, sent another wave of emotion through her. These people operated like a family, a pack, and they had inexplicably made her and her children a part of it. "Thank you," she whispered, the words inadequate. "No," he said, his voice low and intense. "Thank you for having the guts to stand up there and tell the truth. Not many people would have done that. Certainly no politician I've ever met." He released her hand, and the loss of contact was a physical ache. "I'll walk you to your door." The short walk up the path to her house felt like the longest and shortest journey of her life. Every nerve ending was hyper-aware of him, of the solid presence at her side, of the faint scent of leather and night air that clung to him. She fumbled for her keys, her fingers uncharacteristically clumsy. The door swung open to reveal a scene of domestic tranquility that was almost surreal after the chaos of the town hall. Leo was fast asleep on the sofa, his head pillowed on a throw cushion. Chloe was at the kitchen table, a textbook open in front of her, deep in conversation with a warm-faced woman with kind eyes and a property of nobody patch on her denim jacket. "Maria." Maria looked up and smiled. "Ah, the conquering heroes return. Chloe was just helping me understand the Pythagorean theorem. It's been a few years." Chloe grinned. "She's a faster learner than Leo." "The little man conked out about an hour ago," Maria said, standing and gathering her things. "He was full of stories about helping Cruz. You've got some brave kids, Lydia." Lydia's throat tightened. "I know." She looked at Maria, this stranger who was now so intimately woven into the fabric of her life. "I don't know how to thank you." "It's what we do," Maria said simply, giving Cruz a quick hug before heading for the door. "Welcome to the family, honey. Get some rest." And then they were alone. The house was quiet, save for the soft sound of Leo's breathing. Chloe gave her mother a knowing, slightly smug look before gathering her books. "I'm going to bed. Good night, Mom." "Good night, Cruz." "Good night, Chloe," Cruz said, his voice gentle. The click of Chloe's bedroom door echoed in the sudden stillness. Lydia turned to face Cruz, leaning back against the closed front door as if she needed its support. He stood in the middle of her tidy living room, a giant of a man surrounded by her Pottery Barn furniture and framed family photos, looking both entirely out of place and completely irrevocably right. "So," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "So," he echoed. The charged energy from the cliffside returned, magnified 1,000 times by the intimacy of the quiet house, the lateness of the hour, the raw vulnerability of the day. He took a step toward her, then another, until he was standing so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Lydia," he murmured, her name a prayer on his lips. This time there was no pulling back. He cupped her face in his hands, his touch impossibly tender for such strong, work-roughened hands. His eyes searched hers, asking a silent question. Her answer was a slight, almost imperceptible nod, a softening of her entire body toward his. And then he kissed her. It was not a gentle, tentative kiss. It was a claiming, a release, a culmination of weeks of suppressed tension and unspoken longing. It was the taste of coffee and night air and a faint metallic hint of the bike he rode. It was the feeling of his arms wrapping around her, pulling her flush against the solid wall of his chest, making her feel both incredibly fragile and utterly safe. Her hands came up, tangling in the soft leather of his vest, pulling him closer. The world, with all its politics and problems, shrunk to this single point of contact, this storm of sensation. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Lydia's heart was hammering a wild, joyful rhythm against her ribs. She rested her forehead against his, her eyes closed, just breathing him in. "Wow," she breathed. A low, rough chuckle escaped him. "Yeah. Wow." He didn't stay the night. The unspoken understanding that her children were just down the hall held them both in check. But the kiss had changed everything. It was a line crossed, a new territory entered. The following days were a blur of a different kind. The political fallout was minimal, eclipsed by a groundswell of public support for the underdog councilwoman and her biker guardians, as the local paper now charmingly called them. Tom Riggins, his reputation dented, had slunk back to his development deals, his influence significantly weakened. Lydia's life, however, had been irrevocably altered. She started showing up at town meetings with a new perspective, listening to the concerns of small business owners, the veterans, the working class. Her platform shifted from cleaning up to building up. And often, sitting in the back row, was Cruz, a silent, steady presence of support. Their relationship unfolded in stolen moments and quiet dates. A coffee at Elena's restaurant where the entire kitchen staff would grin at them. A walk through the park with Leo and Chloe, who had taken to Cruz with a devotion that made Lydia's heart swell. And the rides, the glorious freeing rides on the back of his Harley, her arms wrapped around his waist, her face pressed against his back as the world blurred into a stream of color and sound. It was on these rides that they talked. Really talked. He told her about his time in the army, about losing a friend, about how the club had become his refuge and his purpose. She told him about her struggles as a young single mother, about the pressure to be perfect, about the loneliness that had festered beneath her polished exterior. One Saturday, a few weeks after the town hall victory, the Knights organized a community cleanup at the local park. It was Lydia's idea, a way to publicly bridge the two worlds. The sight of 24 bikers in their leather vests, wielding rakes and trash bags alongside soccer moms and retirees, was one for the history books. Lydia was hauling a bag of weeds to a dumpster when she saw him. A man standing at the edge of the park leaning against a sleek, expensive sedan. Tom Riggins. He wasn't participating, he was just watching, his expression unreadable behind a pair of sunglasses. A cold trickle of unease went down her spine. She had thought he was defeated, but men like Riggins didn't accept defeat, they just recalculated. Cruz noticed her frozen stance and followed her gaze. His affable expression hardened. He walked over to her, placing a steadying hand on the small of her back. "Don't let him get to you, he's just a vulture circling dead meat. Problem is, there's no meat here." "I know," Lydia said, forcing a smile. "It just feels ominous." "Let him watch," Cruz said, his voice dropping to a low, possessive growl. "Let him see what real community looks like. Let him see what he can never have." His words should have comforted her, and they did for a moment. But as the day wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Riggins eventually drove away, but the shadow he cast seemed to linger. That shadow materialized a week later. Lydia was in her home office preparing for a meeting when her phone buzzed. It was a number she didn't recognize. She answered, her professional mask instantly in place. "Lydia Miller." "Councilwoman Miller," a smooth, cultured voice replied. It was a voice she knew. Arthur Finch, Riggins' lawyer, a man known for his ruthlessness and his ability to operate in the legal gray areas. "I'm calling on behalf of my client, Thomas Riggins. We have a matter of some delicacy to discuss." Lydia's blood ran cold. "I have nothing to discuss with Mr. Riggins or his representatives." "I'm afraid you do," Finch said, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "You see, we've become aware of certain financial arrangements between you and an individual known as Cruz, a member of the Knights of the Asphalt. A rather substantial cash payment was made from his account into yours just days after the vote on Ordinance 42. It paints a very different picture of your motivations, wouldn't you say? Not a change of heart, but a simple business transaction, a payoff." Lydia's world stopped. "That's a lie, there was no payment." "Our bank records suggest otherwise," Finch purred. A transfer of $10,000. We are prepared to go public with this information, which would, of course, not only end your political career, but likely result in criminal charges. Unless, of course, you see reason. Endorse Mr. Riggins's waterfront project. Publicly state that you were misled by the bikers, that you were a victim of their coercion. Do that, and this unfortunate misunderstanding disappears. She hung up the phone, her hand trembling so violently she nearly dropped it. $10,000. It was a lie, a fabrication, but how? How could they have proof? She called Cruz, her voice shaking as she relayed the conversation. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. "I'll be right there." He arrived within minutes, his face a thundercloud. David was with him, his expression grim. "It's a setup," David said without preamble. "A classic Riggins move. He's got someone on the inside, probably at the bank, who can forge those records. He's done it before to a union rep who stood in his way." "But we can fight it, right?" Lydia said, desperation clawing at her throat. "We can prove it's a forgery." "It'll take time," David said. "Time we might not have. Once he leaks this to the press, the court of public opinion will convict you before you can even hire a lawyer." Cruz was pacing her living room like a caged tiger. "He's not just coming for you, Lydia. He's coming for the club. He wants to paint us as the criminals you once thought we were. He wants to destroy everything we just built." The room felt like it was closing in. The happiness, the hope, the new beginning. It was all going to be ripped away, destroyed by a lie. "There has to be something we can do," she whispered, sinking onto the sofa. Cruz stopped pacing and looked at David. A silent communication passed between them, a language born of years of brotherhood and facing down threats. "There is," Cruz said, his voice dropping to a low, determined rumble. "But you're not going to like it. We have to play this a different way. We can't fight him in the light, not on his terms. We have to meet him in the shadows." Lydia's heart pounded. "What does that mean?" "It means," David said, his eyes glinting with a hard, cold light she had never seen before, "that Tom Riggins has skeletons in his closet, big ugly ones, and it's time we introduce them to the world." A frisson of fear mixed with a dark, thrilling sense of hope shot through her. This was the other side of the coin. The loyalty and community came with a price, with a gritty, uncompromising willingness to protect their own by any means necessary. This was the mafia-like aspect of their lifestyle, the part that operated outside the polite rules of her old world. "What kind of skeletons?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Cruz knelt in front of her, taking her cold hands in his. "The kind that involves unsafe working conditions on his construction sites that he's paid off inspectors to ignore. The kind that involves using undocumented labor and paying them pennies, threatening them with deportation if they complain. The kind that involves a mistress in the next town over whose silence he buys with a very generous monthly allowance, drawn from a slush fund his wife knows nothing about." Lydia stared at him, stunned. How do you know all this?" A ghost of a smile touched Cruz's lips. "People talk to their mechanics, Lydia. They talk to the guy who tows their car at 2 a.m. They talk to the bartender who serves them when their conscience is heavy. We're not just bikers, we're a network. We hear things, and we know how to find the proof." He was talking about intimidation, about digging up dirt, about playing just as dirty as Riggins. It was everything she had once stood against. I can't be a part of that," she said, pulling her hands away. "That's blackmail. It's wrong." "Is it?" Cruz's voice was soft but relentless. "Is it wrong to use the truth to stop a lie? Is it wrong to protect your family from a man who's trying to destroy you with a fabrication? He's not playing by the rules, Lydia. Your rules, the council's rules, they're a joke to him. He lives in the gutter. Sometimes to win, you have to be willing to get a little dirty. He stood up, his gaze unwavering. The choice is yours. We can do this your way. Try to fight the forgery in court. Watch your name get dragged through the mud, likely lose everything. Or you can trust us. You can let us handle this. Our way. Lydia looked from Cruz's resolute face to David's calm, determined one. She thought of Leo and Chloe. She thought of the community that had embraced her. She thought of the kiss that had felt like a new beginning. Riggins wasn't just attacking her. He was attacking all of them. He was the embodiment of the cold, selfish, image-obsessed world she had turned her back on. She took a deep, shuddering breath, the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. This was the final line. Crossing it would mean shedding the last vestiges of her old self, fully embracing this new, grittier, more dangerous family. She looked Cruz straight in the eye, her voice steady and clear, laced with the steel he had helped her forge. Do it. The two words hung in the air, a solemn pact sealed not with a handshake, but with the grim understanding in Cruz's eyes. He gave a single sharp nod. Okay then, David. David was already on his phone, his voice a low, commanding murmur. Mark, it's a go, the Riggins file, light it up. He listened for a moment. Yeah, she's in. All the way. He ended the call and looked at Lydia. It's already in motion. We've been sitting on this just in case he got desperate. The efficiency of it was terrifying. This wasn't a panicked reaction. It was a strategic counterstrike, planned and ready for execution. Lydia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. She was no longer just a councilwoman in a political squabble. She was a principal in a shadow war. What happens now? She asked, her voice hushed. Now, Cruz said, his hand coming to rest on her shoulder, a solid, grounding weight. We wait, and you act normal. Go to your meeting. Smile. Riggins will be expecting you to be terrified, to call him begging. Don't give him the satisfaction. It was the hardest performance of her life. The meeting was about municipal waste management, and throughout it, Lydia could feel the phantom eyes of Tom Riggins on her, waiting for her to crack. She delivered her points on recycling initiatives with a calm she didn't feel, her mind screaming with images of clandestine meetings and threatened construction workers. Meanwhile, the night's network hummed with silent, efficient purpose. Mark, the auto shop owner, paid a visit to a foreman on one of Riggins's sites, a man whose brother Mark had bailed out of a serious jam years ago. The conversation was quiet, held over the open hood of a pickup truck. No threats were made. Just a simple, stark choice. The truth about the shoddy foundation materials and the paid-off safety inspector gets told to the right people, or it doesn't. The foreman, a weary man named Joe, paled and handed over a thumb drive. Paul, the veteran, used his connections at the VFW to find a disgruntled former security guard Riggins had fired. The guard, bitter and needing money, was all too happy to provide details about Riggins's late-night visits to a certain apartment across town and the cash-filled envelopes he'd hand to the beautiful dark-haired woman who lived there. By nightfall, a complete dossier, digital and physical, was placed in David's hands. It contained invoices for substandard materials, encrypted messages with a corrupt city inspector, sworn affidavits from intimidated workers, and time-stamped photos of Riggins with his mistress. That evening, Cruz and David came to Lydia's house. They laid the contents of a plain manila folder on her coffee table. It was a catalog of corruption, a map of a man's moral bankruptcy. Lydia sifted through the pages, her stomach turning. It was one thing to hear about it. It was another to see the cold, hard evidence. It's overwhelming, she breathed. It's leverage, David corrected gently. The question is, how do you want to play this? We can drop this anonymously to the press and watch him burn. Or we can have a conversation with him. Lydia looked at the photo of Riggins with his mistress. She thought of his wife, a quiet, elegant woman she'd seen at charity functions. She thought of the workers he'd exploited. A public explosion would be satisfying, but it would create immense collateral damage. "A conversation," she said finally. "He needs to understand that he's lost. Completely." A slow, approving smile spread across David's face. "That's my preference, too. More elegant." The meeting was set for the following day at the Rusty Bolt. It was a deliberate power play. They were meeting on their turf. Lydia walked in with Cruz and David, the scent of stale beer and motor oil now familiar, almost comforting. Riggins was already there, sitting at a scarred wooden table, Arthur Finch by his side. He looked smug, confident, sipping a glass of whiskey. "Lydia," Riggins said, not bothering to stand. "I see you've come to your senses. I trust Arthur's call clarified the situation." Lydia didn't sit. She stood flanked by Cruz and David and looked down at him. "It did, Tom. It clarified that you're a desperate man who's about to lose everything." Riggins's smile faltered. "I don't think you understand the position you're in." David tossed the manila folder onto the table. It slid to a stop in front of Finch. "I think it's you who doesn't understand, Mr. Riggins. Open it." Finch opened the folder, his eyes scanning the first page. His smug expression evaporated, replaced by a waxen pallor. He leaned over and whispered urgently in Riggins's ear. As he spoke, Riggins's face drained of all color. His hand holding the whiskey glass began to tremble, making the ice cubes clink softly. He looked up at Lydia, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and fury. This is extortion." "No," Cruz said, his voice a low, dangerous growl that seemed to vibrate in the quiet bar. "This is a ceasefire. You're going to withdraw your false allegations. You're going to publicly state that you were mistaken about the financial transaction, that you were given bad information. You're going to drop your interest in the waterfront project and any other developments that require council approval for the foreseeable future. And you're going to quietly make restitution to every worker you've cheated on your sites." "And if I don't?" Riggins spat, though the bravado was gone, replaced by a pathetic, wheedling tone. "Then," Lydia said, her voice cold and clear, "every document in that folder gets delivered to the district attorney, the state attorney general, the IRS, and the front page of the Havenwood Herald. Your wife will get a special delivery. Your business partners will get a copy. Your life, Tom, will be over." The silence in the bar was absolute. Riggins looked from Lydia's unyielding face to Cruz's hardened gaze to David's calm certainty. He saw no bluff. He was a man who dealt in threats and lies, and he was finally facing an immovable object, the truth, backed by unwavering force. He deflated, slumping in his chair like a punctured balloon. "Fine," he whispered, the word a surrender. "You'll have your public retraction by noon tomorrow," Finch said stiffly, closing the folder as if it were contaminated. As Riggins and Finch slunk out of the bar, the tension broke. Lydia let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, her knees feeling weak. Cruz's hand was immediately on her back, steadying her. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft now, the menace gone. She nodded, leaning into his touch. "I am. It's just, I've never done anything like that before." "You were perfect," David said, a genuine smile on his face. "Cool as a cucumber. Welcome to the inner circle, Lydia." He clapped Cruz on the shoulder. "I'll leave you two. We've got a club run to plan. Gotta celebrate." When they were alone, Cruz led her to a booth in the corner. The jukebox was playing a low, classic rock ballad. He slid in beside her, his arm draping comfortably over her shoulders. "You know," he said, looking around the dim, honest space, "this all started with you wanting to shut this place down." Lydia rested her head against his shoulder, the leather of his vest soft against her cheek. "I was a fool. This place, it has more honor than any country club or council chamber I've ever been in." He turned his head, his lips brushing her hair. "It's yours now. Too. if you want it. She lifted her head to look at him. The charged chemistry was back, but it was different now. Deeper. It was no longer just about attraction, it was about partnership, about a shared victory, about a future they had fought for together. I want it, she whispered. I want all of it. This time his kiss was slow, deep, and filled with a profound promise. It was a kiss that tasted of truth, of hard-won peace, and of a love that had been forged in the fires of conflict and had emerged stronger than steel. The retraction came, as promised. Tom Riggins, in a terse written statement, admitted to being misinformed by an unreliable source and apologized to Lydia and the Knights of the Asphalt for the unfortunate misunderstanding. He announced he was taking a step back from public life to focus on his family. The town gossiped for a day, then moved on. A month later, the Knights of the Asphalt held their annual charity toy run, a massive procession of motorcycles, each rider carrying a gift for a child in need. This year it was bigger than ever. Lydia rode on the back of Cruz's bike, Leo and Chloe on their own bicycles, part of the procession at the front, flanked by David and Maria, Mark and Elena. They rode through the streets of Havenwood not as outcasts or a disruptive element, but as heroes, as pillars of the community. As they pulled into the parking lot of the Children's Hospital, where a crowd was cheering, Leo looked up at Cruz, his face beaming with pride. "This is the best day ever." Cruz ruffled the boy's hair, his eyes meeting Lydia's over Leo's head. In them she saw everything. The past's struggles, the present's joy, and the future's endless open road. "Yeah, kid," Cruz said, his voice thick with emotion. "It really is." The story of the single mother who judged a book by its cover only to have her children save one of its pages had reached its final chapter. But for Lydia, Cruz, and their newly forged family, it was only the thrilling, heartfelt beginning of a whole new volume, written not in ink, but in the freedom of the asphalt and the unbreakable bonds of a love that had roared into their lives and changed everything forever. The victory over Tom Riggins was absolute, but its taste was more complex than Lydia had imagined. It wasn't the sweet, uncomplicated triumph of a political debate won. It was the gritty, sobering satisfaction of having survived a street fight. She had looked into the abyss of her own capacity for ruthlessness and found Cruz's hand there, not pushing her in, but holding her steady as she peered over the edge. In the quiet weeks that followed, her life settled into a new, richer rhythm. The Knights weren't just her defenders, they were her neighbors, her friends. Her polished world of council meetings now seamlessly blended with backyard barbecues at David and Maria's, the air filled with the scent of grilled meat and the sound of laughter mingling with the rumble of idle motorcycles. Her relationship with Cruz deepened, moving from the charged, passionate early days into something more substantial, more grounded. It was in the quiet moments. Him fixing the leaky faucet she'd complained about for months, her helping him with the paperwork for his expanding custom bike shop. It was in the way he looked at her children, not as a responsibility tied to her, but as individuals he genuinely adored. He taught Leo how to change a tire, his large, grease-stained hands guiding the boy's smaller ones with infinite patience. He talked to Chloe about her college plans, his questions surprisingly insightful, his belief in her absolute. One evening, sitting on her porch swing, watching him play a rough-and-tumble game of fetch with the ecstatic, wriggling puppy he'd surprised Leo with, Lydia felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. This was it. This messy, loud, loyal, and fiercely loving life was what she had been searching for all along without ever knowing it. He caught her looking and walked over, the setting sun casting a golden halo around his silhouette. He saw her tears and his face softened with concern. "Lyd, you okay?" She reached up, her hand curling around the back of his neck, pulling him down for a soft, lingering kiss. "I've never been better," she whispered against his lips. This is all I've ever wanted. You, them, this. He rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. Good, he rumbled, his voice thick with emotion, because you're stuck with us. The story of the councilwoman who hated bikers was now a town legend, a folktale of prejudice overturned and community rediscovered. But for Lydia, the real story was the one written every day in the simple, powerful language of shared meals, of a hand held in the dark, of the unwavering rumble of a motorcycle pulling into her driveway, signaling that her hero, her partner, was home. She had traded a polished image for a patched-up, leather-clad, and infinitely more beautiful reality. And as she sat there, wrapped in his arms, surrounded by the sounds of her laughing children, she knew with every fiber of her being that she had finally, truly arrived. Thank you for riding along on this incredible journey. Has your life ever been completely turned around by a single act of kindness? If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below.